81?
81, man. I can't believe we've done this many times and we're still civil to a degree, at least. Uh,
That's relative, though.
that's true. I want to echo my esteemed co-host Walker's sentiments on the opening and just express my gratitude and thanks for everyone who tuned in for the first time last week and those of you who thought enough to listen again today. Last week's episode was great. I believe we've got another great episode today. If you're looking at this on YouTube, which I hope you are, because that means I've done all my video editing, which I've been super behind on. You can see a young lady joining us today, and you're probably wondering who is that? Well, let me give you a brief intro, if I could. Personally, I've known this woman for many years. Her husband and I used to work together, and our families have gotten together on several occasions. We've had a lot of compelling discussions over the years, some really good conversations back in the day. This woman has a deep-rooted academic history in African American literature. And I can personally say has schooled me on a lot of nuances in that comes with the African American experience, a lot of which I was unaware of just over the years. So she recently earned her PhD in May. Yeah, let me introduce to you the Dr. Sondra Washington. Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you.
Welcome. And congratulations, by the way.
Thank you so much. Thank y'all for having me.
Of course. Walker, I love doing intros, dude.
That's your thing, I know. First for the listeners, like how's your family been? How have you been? How have y'all been dealing with COVID? Just kind of talk about what's been going on with y'all.
My family's well, thankfully. Everybody in my family's well. The people back in Louisiana, I'm a Louisiana girl. They're all well, thankfully. It's just been kind of strange, I'm sure for everybody being at home so much. And it's kind of like everybody's dreams to be home has become a little bit of a nightmare, but we're all doing well.
Good. So you got your PhD in African American literature, right? Yes. So what's the next step for you?
Well, I have secured a position as assistant professor of American literature at the Harriet Wilkes Honors College of Florida Atlantic University.
Nice.
So I will be beginning to teach courses there in the fall and working on my monograph, the first book, I hope.
Good deal.
Nice.
Thanks.
Give us like what's your monograph, like what are you trying to tackle with that?
Well, for my dissertation, I wrote about Black girlhood in African American literature because from what I was able to ascertain, like Black girls typically are overlooked quite a lot. I think when people are talking about the struggle, they're talking about people in general, and oftentimes children, in the Black experience are told oftentimes to not participate in adult things, like this is grown folks conversations, and so I think that kind of trickles down into our respect and understanding of literature. So we see Black girl characters sometimes and overlook them, or worse, sometimes we see them and we think that they're more adult-like. And there's a lot of research going around right now on the adultification of Black girls. So lots of times people see Black girls as older, and so they don't see them as needing assistance or as innocent. They treat them as adults rather than as children. And so that causes a certain kind of trauma in Black girls. Mm-hmm. And so I was researching that in literature and how different people kind of tackle that issue.
Did your blog kind of lead you down this path? I noticed that you have a blog. Care to share about that?
Yes. So I started the Black Girlhood Project as a way to connect people who are studying Black girlhood. Black girlhood studies is a newish area, subspecialty in both African American studies and African American literature. And so oftentimes people are working on things and we don't know who's working on what because it's not as formalized as some of the more traditional areas of study. And so I would go to conferences or be at different events, and then I would give a paper on a topic, and then someone say, oh, I'm working on Black girls too. And then I was trying to create a community so that we can share resources and talk about the different issues that we see happening in literature as it relates to Black girls. So it was welcomed, and so many people have linked to it, and many people are saying now that they're going to write blogs for it. So we're trying to create a community in African American literature to promote the study of girls.
What drove this? What began to drive this passion for you along this line? I believe you're a mother of a daughter.
Of a Black girl, yes. When my daughter was young, I had the most trouble trying to find books that reflected her experience. And so I remember she came home from school one day and she said, I wish I had yellow hair. And so on the one hand,
me too.
On the one hand, it was like, okay, kids like to, she could want to be a firefighter or police officer or secretary or whatever the case may have been, a president, And so it hurt me a little bit that she wanted something that she could never have. Like, naturally, I thought she was beautiful in her own right, and she didn't need yellow hair to be cute. And I know that she was associating that with whiteness and thinking that that was better than what she had. And so I went on a mission trying to find books that would help her to kind of appreciate her experience and who God created her to be. And so it was really hard to find those things. And so I think somewhere in my mind, those things kind of remain there. And as I started reading things or rereading texts that I'd read in the past, I really focused in on the Black girls, because I was thinking back to her experience and how even Black authors in a lot of ways weren't writing about Black girls. They would often write about Black boys. President Obama, when he was talking about, am I my brother's keeper? Who's keeping the Black girls? So there was kind of a disconnect, I think, for people. And I think it is that adultification that Black girls are little Black women. And so Black women are supposed to be really strong and not need assistance. And so that kind of gets transferred onto them as well. So I kind of went along that path, and I've just gone as it's taking me.
It's definitely a space for that. And I applaud you for seeing that need and attempting to fill it and discovering a whole community out there that needed it as well. So shouts out to you for that. Gatra, you want to transition us into the... I'll tell you.
Yeah, sorry. I was letting you deliver that. So Sondra, in regard of recent times of civil unrest and a lot of questions about racial equality and things like that, I was forwarded a copy of your Facebook post that you made. I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago now. As I shared with you beforehand, and I'd like to share with the listeners, it caused me to, it made me feel a certain type of way. Honestly, I read through half of it and I sent it to Walker, and I just knew I had to have you on because I wanted to hear about some of the thoughts, some of the emotions that drove you to that post, and to I feel like brilliantly capture and deliver a lot of the thoughts that I had been having, seeing a lot of these things as well. Could you elaborate on that for us, please?
Sure. So just as I had to pull it up myself to kind of, I feel like in recent events with the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, and now Rayshad, I think, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name yet.
Rayshad.
Yeah.
I've just been kind of experiencing a different kind of feeling than I've normally had. I think there have been so many cases of Black men and women and kids being killed unnecessarily, and unfortunately, that it just was taking a toll on me. And so while I was dealing with that, I was also dealing with the space that I kind of feel and the people who I know, and how I'm usually kind of tempering myself to protect the feelings of other people rather than kind of really giving myself the space to kind of deal with the trauma that I'm experiencing as a Black person in America, seeing all this happen, wondering about my daughter, myself, going into new spaces where people don't know me. And so I think all that was coming to a head. And so I found myself very kind of down, I wouldn't say necessarily despair, but definitely down, not just about the deaths themselves, but about how I've responded in those cases, in that attempt to protect other people's feelings. And then I was noticing that the people whose feelings I was trying to protect, they weren't concerned about my feelings, And so I felt like it's always the turn of the cheek kind of situation. But at the same time, I felt like in no other area of my life do I remain tied to people who cause me harm, and so why am I concerned about these people who are causing me harm with no regard as to how it affects me? And I think I saw a post that somebody stated, whereas they had not commented on the death of George Floyd, which was horrendous. And quite frankly, I still have not been able to bring myself to watch the video, because you got to kind of know what level of trauma you can take and be okay with.
Self-care.
Yeah,
absolutely. So someone had not said anything about any of these deaths. And then it was kind of like one of these posts that's like, yeah, okay, so he died and that's terrible. But however, look at these stores and look at what these people are doing. And they're talking about the response to the injustice rather than the injustice itself. And I thought, we got one part George Floyd and 3 or 4 or 5 parts capitalism and like maintenance of the systemic oppression in America. So right. I just had enough of it. And I found myself on social media posting things that would kind of educate those people, bring them along, And at one point I kind of considered myself kind of a missionary to white people, because I was like the friend, that they had. And I felt like if they knew me, then surely they could understand that it's not just me. I'm not the only one who is productive in society, who's not, a criminal or
right.
doing all these terrible things. And it just wasn't getting through. And so I thought, I'm done with trying to educate people who are intellectual in every other aspect of their lives. And if they don't know now, after having known me for some people, decades, having known me, and still having these feelings, then I'm no longer talking to those people. But I'm not unfriending them, because like we say, I'm done with you, I'm unfriending you. I'm not unfriending them. I'm just doing what I'm doing. I'm taking the mask off and I am going to be who I am. And if they don't like it, then they can distance themselves from me. But this is my space and I'm claiming it.
Was that really eating away at you, the fact that there's a big part of you that your peers just don't know? Like, yeah. I've suppressed a part of the realness of me and how I feel. And, I think we all have felt this way. Like, do you feel as though you only know 50% of me or 40% of me? And if I really give you the other 60% in this moment, you won't even be able to digest me. I won't be palatable enough for you to comprehend or associate yourself with my Blackness.
Absolutely. I mean, Paul Laurence Dunbar, back in the 19th century wrote about, we wear the mask that grins and lies, and it hides our face and eyes. And I feel like that is what I had been doing inadvertently in a way. Right. Like I didn't mean to wear the mask, but I think that I kind of understood how things work. And I pushed against the system, but not as much as I do in my relationships that are completely fluid and open, where I can just be myself. And it's exhausting. That's a heavy burden to bear, to always be concerned about like what somebody's thinking. And, that's the Black experience. You're always wondering like who's looking at me, if I'm walking around in a store, are they thinking I'm taking something, when you see people kind of clutch, themselves a little tighter, you see all the people being reported for doing like absolutely normal things, you're always being watched. This gaze is exhausting. It's a lot of work. And I'm just tired of that burden.
Right.
And you know, Sondra, just hearing you say that, that delivers, I guess, the emotional bond I had to it, because you just gave a great example of what I deal with every day. You know, one of the I had a conversation with a white male last week, and it's so crazy. It was somewhat therapeutic, but it helped me to realize just how normal I've made the mask, as we say it is here, you know. And I don't want people to think like I'm a totally different person, because I don't think I'm totally different, but there's a lot of things that I know I have to equip myself with when I leave this house, in order to ensure your level of comfort based on these norms that society and some of the media have placed on men that look like me. You know, I get it. I know I'm a huge, massive figure. Like, I get that, but you know,
which is not a crime.
It's not a crime. Yeah, and the biggest thing with me is, like, for the people that know me, they know what my family means to me. They know what coming home to my family each day means to me. You know, like, I'm not out here just to, like, say I'm big and I'm bad and I'm here to do damage upon everyone. You know, like, no, I want to be friends with you, but more importantly, I want to make it back home to my wife and kids, you know? So that, seriously, like, I got goosebumps, because it just solidified so much of what I felt when I read that. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Have you had any, let's talk about some of the positive experiences, if there have been any. Have there been any positive experiences? Because I know sometimes, you know, for every one person who gets it, there's like 4 or 5 that you'd be like, you know, I really wish you didn't see my post, or I really wish you didn't, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
Are there some who's like, you know what, I've never really thought about it that way? Or people who've been openly receptive to you trying to educate white people on the injustice that Black people have to deal with?
Sure. I was actually surprised. I had a friend who's known me for quite some time, and she actually asked me about, like, she said that white pastors had these questions. They didn't know what to do with, you know, with all of this. And they were asking questions as far as what could they do? And did I have any kind of information that I could offer them? And so on the one hand, I want to go, yeah, as a matter of fact, let me tell you, know, that's that part of me, I guess, the educator in me, who's like, okay, yes, let me try to build this bridge again. You know, I've been building bridges and they've been just disregarded or burned down, or, you know, and so I was just sick of the bridges. And so I told her, absolutely not. I feel like, you know, pastors go to the ends of the internet to look up what one word means in the Bible, you know, so that they can have some new take on a word or a sermon that they've delivered, you know, and those people are intelligent enough to use the phone that is in their hands most of the day and locate information, because so many people have printed so many things that we have articles and videos and endless amounts of documentaries and personal narratives that they could read to understand and then do something about it. And so I didn't want to offer any more information on that. And I told her that in quite a long email response, actually. I started typing and it just went crazy. But I think she saw that there was a break there somewhere, you know, that things had changed, you know? And so I think she saw me in pain, you know, because I lifted that veil, and I was like, it hurts for people to continuously disregard your mental health and your well-being and your experience. You know, when people continuously tell you that it's not important, that takes a toll on you. And I think she saw that. And so she called me and she was checking on me, and she was like, look, I know that everybody's been busy, things have been crazy, but I just wanted to check on you and make sure you're okay. And then she was saying, you know, I am so sorry. I did not get it at first, you know, and I want to do better, and I'm trying to do better, you know, help me do better. And so that was really, like, it touched my heart, you know, because that's all I want, is for somebody to see us. And
why is it so hard to get, like, it's not that deep. It is not that deep.
It's the easiest thing in the world. Just care.
Why do you stumble over that? We don't need you to fix racism. We just need you to understand.
And understanding will lead you to the next steps.
Right.
You know, like just like with
Right.
everything else, if I care about animals not being mistreated, I learn more about situations in which they are mistreated, and then I go out and do something to keep them from being mistreated. People
Right.
foster animals all the time. They do all kinds of things all the time to fix things that they see that are wrong. But in this case, it's like, I don't know what to do. You know, that kind of perspective is just so annoying, I guess.
It's like a willful ignorance is what I call it. It's like I'm choosing to remain aloof. Even though I can do something about it,
It is absolutely a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think it's I don't know, do you think it's almost like if I'm ignorant to something, I don't really have to take full responsibility for my part in solving it?
Absolutely.
Do you think that's a part of it for some people? Like, I know if once I find out, it's almost kind of like me with food, right? I have a favorite snack and I refuse to look at the nutrition facts on the back of the package, because the moment I look at the nutrition facts, I will never look at that snack the same way again. Right. Although it's almost like I know I got to do something with this sugar content and the calories or whatever. I can't act like I used to before knowing. Do you think there's a fear there that once I fully understand, I can't go back to my way of living anymore?
I think so. I think nobody wants to be uncomfortable, really. Like we all want to be as comfortable as we can be. And then there's no growth in that. There's no sustainability in that. You can't always be comfortable. You know, we always have to be uncomfortable, you know, at some point to move, to do something different. Right. And so I think part of it is kind of a guilt, you know, and I think it's a misplaced guilt, actually, because if you really don't know something is happening and you're participating in that process and you find out that you did something that was wrong or that you might have done something wrong, that is an uncomfortable place to be, but then you can fix it. But if you don't find out, then it's kind of like, you know, plausible deniability, you know, or you can kind of just keep living in that way without addressing the problem itself. You know, I think it's more of that than it is like hatred. There is some hatred, you know, absolutely. But there's more, I think, guilt, you know, from having to deal with it than just, I don't, that's my opinion anyway.
Gotcha. To kind of pivot from that, you know, we talk a lot about, you know, there are a lot of cases where we've had a lot of men who have been murdered and mistreated by police officers. But in recent the past few months, we've seen the Tatiana Jeffersons, Breonna Taylors. There's actually, I don't know if y'all recall, but a few years back in Texas, the Jerria Becton, I think is her name. Oh, yeah. 15-year-old got slammed down by an officer at a pool party. Yes. So as a mother of a Black girl, we often talk about, we have to talk to our sons about how they should interact with the police. Has incidents like those, the Sandra Blands, have that raised your alert level and sense of urgency as it pertains to your daughter? Absolutely. I think having a daughter, there's so many different warnings that you have to give from all areas, you know, like I kind of remember in The Color Purple where Janie's grandmother, I'm mixing books. There I Was Watching God. Janie's grandmother said, you know, the Black woman is the mule of the earth, you know, and then so I think she was talking about like the hard work, right? So she's fighting against, you know, the patriarchy and, you know, white male privilege and white women who are mistreating them in certain situations. And then, but also Black men, you know, can mistreat Black women as well. And it's not to say that that happens in all cases, you know. I think that's where people get hung up on the information. But then when you factor in age, there's kind of another tier, another level down, actually, where you have to kind of warn girls because they have even less agency than a woman might.
And so absolutely, I'm telling her about, issues that she might face with men, with the police, just, if somebody's trying to pull you over, put your hazards on, drive to a bright area, a well-lit area, which, we know now that none of that stuff really matters because you can have somebody live and, on clear videotape and things still won't happen to bring justice to the situation. But absolutely, it terrifies me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And Sondra, to that, staying in that lane, I had a very moving conversation with a Black female friend of mine recently, and she and I'll I'll make this brief, but in essence, her feeling she expressed to me was a sense of Black feminism being lost in this current movement, and she challenged me, because I mean it is. We do respect and we do honor, not respect and honor, but we acknowledge the impact that George Floyd's execution had on us as black people, but Walker and I being Black men. But she didn't want to take anything away from that, but she was concerned that, the memory of the Breonna Taylors and the Tatiana Jeffersons were getting lost in all that was George Floyd. So her, I guess one of the points of emphasis she made was in terms of Black feminism, there's still a space for us as well to keep the memory alive of those Black women whose lives were lost due to over-aggressive policing tactics. In your opinion, as a Black female, do you agree with those sentiments? And if so, what can we as Black men do to really prop up or give more or present more awareness to the essence that does encapsulate the Breonna Taylors and the Tatiana Jeffersons as well? That was really loaded, but do you see where I'm going there?
Yeah,
okay.
I think I do.
Okay.
I think that first of all, full disclosure, my relationship to feminism is a very complicated one because that space was typically not, even though Black women participated in the rise of feminism, it really was not a space that was really devoted to our well-being in a lot of ways. It was very much a white woman space. And so then you had people who talk about, Black feminism and womanism is something that Alice Walker I think Alice Walker started that, but that kind of idea that we are also here, like we are also women who have very specific needs, and it's not an Olympics of suffering to where who suffered the most necessarily, but there is another layer to the Black woman's experience being both Black and woman. So as far as that goes, I've not heard of people saying anything about Black women being somehow less feminist if they support or really participate in justice for and equality for people like George Floyd. But I will say that just the opposite kind of seems to exist, where people encourage Black women to be these ride or die chicks for guys in situations that are toxic for them. So I think Black women have always been encouraged to be the backbone for some Black man. I think there was a preacher recently who was talking about his wife was his backbone, and she had to really kind of, I don't know if y'all remember, I can't remember this guy's name, but he was saying that she was his backbone and she really kind of nurtured him and helped him grow. And it was kind of like a mother situation.
John Gray.
That's him. And I thought, that's a completely inappropriate and imbalanced kind of perspective to have and expectation to have for her. But hey, that's their marriage, and if that works for them, But I feel like that is what I've seen more of than people questioning Black women's alliance to other Black women in supporting Black men. But I will say that I do believe that there is some sexism involved in why we kind of gravitate towards the George Floyds rather than the Breonna Taylors. I think one element is you could actually see him being killed on film, whereas we're just told about her experience, right? So there's that. So I think people see things and it kind of registers with them in a different way, obviously. But I will say that it is interesting, and that people kind of don't become as outraged over the Breonna Taylors and the Sandra Blands and the Tatiana Jeffersons. You know, you can see a police officer take drag a Black girl across a high school floor in front of all of her peers and not storm the building to help that girl get some justice. People automatically assume, well, she probably was mouthing off. And, you know, like they make all these assumptions about what she was doing rather than the fact that this person is there to protect her, not to harm her. And the very person who's supposed to protect her harmed her. So I don't know why that is, but I think that Black men can just be mindful of that there is another level of oppression just as a woman. And then when you add that to the racial oppression, it becomes a totally different animal.
Right.
You know?
Right. And basically, you know, what I'm hearing is just looking after each other and looking after our women and letting them know, listen, we see y'all. Like we see y'all and we feel a way. Like, you know, I have a niece, I have a sister. Like I think something Gatry and I have discussed in previous podcasts. Like we can see the humanity because we picture our siblings and our nieces or whoever being dragged across the floor. And then, you know what I mean? So it's a part of us that knows if that was my loved one, I would move heaven and earth to get justice in that situation. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes we don't do that like we should in a lot of cases. And I think also too, I think a lot of us have grown numb to these incidents, and a lot of it is we in an attempt to kind of preserve our own well-being, we become a little insensitive to it and not treat it like we would treat a George Floyd. And I think even though we're trying to self-care, we need to understand that this is just as much of an injustice as the next issue that comes up.
Absolutely. And I think to further to lift the veil in this space, in this particular space, a little bit more. I think too that there may be guilt on the behalf of Black men for not standing up for Black women and Black girls more. And not exactly in the same way as like, you know, white oppression necessarily, but like in a similar type of diminishment. I think that is something that Black men need to deal with, you know, about the complexities of the relationships that they have with Black women. And because I've heard of other, you know, academics even being in spaces where they're talking about this issue, Black men and women's relationships, and then having some man like in the audience just check her publicly, as in she has no right to be talking about this. It's kind of like letting people into the family's business, or, you know, saying something that shouldn't be saying. So I've heard of situations like that. And I've actually seen a situation like that take place where a Black man got up in a meeting and, you know, like an auditorium, and kind of really inappropriately, I think, started addressing questions toward this Black woman speaker. And so it was just interesting to me that he would do that to her, because I kept thinking, like, if she was a white woman, would you talk to her in that way? You know, like, would you come at her that hard?
Yeah.
Publicly? Yeah. It's okay for us to disagree about ideas. That's what we do as academics. But there's a way to disagree with anybody that you don't have to berate them or try to embarrass them publicly, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that there's some work that needs to occur in our relationships, even within the race, to kind of, you know, fix and, you know, improve these situations.
Gotcha. So, Sondra, you know, I really feel that, right? Because in hearing you answer that, I thought about some of your opening comments about, you know, the challenges of raising a young Black woman. And selfishly, I will admit, you know, because I'm no stranger to being transparent on this podcast, but it keeps me up at night thinking about my boys sleeping upstairs, and what I can do to be a positive influence and positive role model to them, but what kind of lessons I have to teach them as they mature. But honestly, Sondra, and I'm not taking anything away from that, but you helped me to realize that with a young Black female, there's even another layer on top of that, and I feel like, going back to the question you just answered, me as a Black male, husband and father, me being more aware of that, I've got a unique opportunity to, as I'm shaping these boys to become men, to weave in the nuances of, preserving, let me say this, it transcends who they decide they're going to marry. If they marry somebody Black, whatever, it doesn't matter. But in terms of like weaving in those important lessons about, what not only the woman, but the Black woman deserves in terms of respect, honor, and things like that. Like, I don't know, that's something I never had to think about, or something I chose not to think about before you said that. But there's a lot of value in that, and it makes me empathetic to your struggle in raising your young Black daughter, because again, there's that other layer that I never thought about. So definitely appreciate you sharing that.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
I just had to dump that out.
No, no, I think it's like in this struggle, we're saying, Black lives matter, Black women's lives matter, and every woman should be treated with respect, right? But that's kind of like an all women matter versus, Black women matter kind of thing. Like, of course, all women should be treated with respect, but particularly you have to be mindful of the fact that, traditionally Black women have not been treated with respect. And so there is some kind of, I guess, collective trauma in that process, where I'm trying to teach my daughter how to navigate this world in a way where she's not combative, but also where she's not, so pliable that she's, susceptible to whatever kind of whims people have about who she is or what she has to, go through. It's kind of it's a tricky situation. You don't want to teach your kid to grow up and think the worst, but then you have to tell her to kind of sometimes expect the worst. There are things that can happen, and it's a touchy kind of situation to be in. And I don't know that I've done this well necessarily. I always say, like, parenting is an experiment, and we'll see how it turns out later.
You could say that again.
Yeah. So we'll see. I've tried to do my best, but it would be nice to know that there was a collective effort in taking care of her and her well-being. So I don't know what that looks like. It's hard to kind of imagine, but it's something I hope to see.
Definitely. And I think as men, Gatry and I, just understanding the Black woman's plight, because in many ways, as you articulated so well, y'all catch it from both ends, from within your community and outside of your community. And I think as Black men, we have to, again, it goes back to what I mentioned previously, having privilege. And as men, that we have an experience even within our own communities that's unique to a Black woman's. And if we can appreciate that, that will help us to kind of assume responsibility as well as hold each other accountable for how we treat Black women within our community. I'm a stern believer that even though we'll have allies, we'll have people who will lock arms with us, we have to act and move as though we all we got at the end of the day, and act like it. So yeah. Did you have anything else? Any other questions? Because I think Sondra nailed it.
I second that. I mean, she's got me in a state of introspect over here. So yeah.
Sondra, would you like to provide any contact information for people to reach out? You're going to be this new fly dope professor down at FAU, killing it. So any way people can reach out to you and then keep up with you. You want to post, plug your blog. Just go ahead and this is your time.
Thank you. Okay. Well, first, I would love it if people would participate in the Black Girlhood Project. Link to it. To let there's all kinds of ways once you are on that site to connect, and if they could visit the site at blackgirlhoodproject.com. That would be great to grow that community. Also, if they'd like to contact me, my email address, should I give that now?
You can.
Yeah.
swashington@fau.edu. So they can reach me there and we could continue this dialogue. I would like to say, though, that I am one woman, not every woman. My opinions are my own. And I'm sure that there are tons of women out there who completely disagree with so many different things that I have said. And I respect them and respect their opinions. Those are my opinions, though, and what I've kind of come to understand and appreciate. So I don't want I think that people have this idea of like, not necessarily tokenism, but there's this idea that some one Black person said something, and so that must be truth, right? So some one Black woman says something, and that must be truth. That's my truth, right? So I just wanted to say that I don't expect people to feel like that is everybody's opinion. But yeah, I would love to connect with people. So if they want to reach out, please do.
Okay. We'll make sure to send all of our white friends who have questions about Black people to you. I'm pretty sure you will.
I'm ready. Not doing it. I have nothing for them. The internet's got them taken care of.
Hilarious.
Nope.
Well, Sondra, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being our latest friend of the show. And good luck with everything. You're killing it out here. And we're excited to see where you go next.
Thank y'all so much. And I love this the opportunity. I appreciate it so much. And I'm so thankful that y'all are interested in having a woman's perspective.
No doubt.
Building those bridges.
No doubt. Well, guys, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Thank you.